YouTube, vinyl community, Bob Dylan fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we are here today to talk about Bob Dylan's 1975 album, January 20th, 1975, Blood on the Tracks. This has, over time, become one of his more influential and well-remembered albums. It's actually one of his better-selling albums as well. I believe this one has actually gone several times platinum at this point. It's done pretty well for itself, but this, at the time, was kind of seen as a return to form in a number of ways. He re-signed with Columbia Records after having been away from them for a couple albums, and a lot of this album is him, a guitar, and a harmonica, and absolutely fascinating lyrics. So, for, I guess you can call them original Bob Dylan fans, or purists, if you will, this was probably a welcome return to form after having him go country, then just do a covers album, and then kind of all over the place. This was back to basics. I hate to use the term back to basics, but it really was kind of in that vein. And it wasn't intended to be. It actually was going to start off being an electric album, and then Bob just kind of changed his mind after calling up Mike Bloomfield one day, being like, hey, let's go do an album together. And Mike came in, and they had some other guys come in, and Bob started playing the songs, and no one was able to keep up with Bob at the rate of speed he was going, because all the songs kept changing. They would change tempos, he would add a verse, he would cut a verse, he would add a chorus, and a lot of the guys weren't keeping up, and Bob just wasn't having it at that time, so he cut it back to a more acoustic thing, found different players, they cut it in like 2 days. It was a super quick session, and that was it. It was originally planned for a Christmas release in 1974, but once he kind of showed some of his songs over to his brother David, he played the album, and David was like, no, you might want to change some of this up. I don't know how commercial this sounds. Bob, after having recorded everything in New York City, went to Minneapolis, and they recorded half the album there. So took half the album from New York, half the album from Minneapolis, put this thing out in early January instead. He was also really stoked to be back with Columbia because of their marketing arm. I mean, that distribution, that marketing, the strength of that company. He knew that if he was back with Columbia again, it would be kind of a big deal, and this thing might get the push that it justifiably deserves. It's a great album. Easily one of his best, and here are the reasons why. So we're going to talk about this thing now, but yeah, this did go double platinum, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, it went to #1 on the Billboard 200, hit #4 in the UK, so it's one of his best-selling charting albums for sure. It's also one of my favorites. If I had to pick some of my favorite Bob Dylan albums, this one for me personally is up there. His storytelling on this album is so imaginative and so heartfelt and so, I don't know if I want to use the word vulnerable, but it's definitely sort of stark. In the years since this album has come out, he's been on record as saying, yeah, this album was about me, or no, why would I ever write about that kind of stuff? And then years and years later, these songs were all inspired by stories by Anton Chekhov. So who really knows? A lot of this does kind of sound like what may have been going through his life at that time. He was getting divorced from his wife Sarah. Jacob Dylan, his son, has said, yeah, this album's about my parents talking. So we will never really know the true stories behind this album for sure, in classic Dylan-esque, manners. But regardless, even if we don't know the true history about it, it still makes a fantastic listen. The first song on here, Tangled Up in Blue, I absolutely love this track. I mean, it's easily one of his best. Bob's voice is so tight and conversational, but there's a real good maturity to it. He sounds assured, he sounds, rested, and he's got the whole song is about looking back on different stories and looking back on your life and thinking, oh, I did this differently, I could have done this differently, or here's exactly what happened here. But the guitar work is so bright, it's played fiercely, the harmonica work is such a fitting way to end the song. And the lyrics really do talk about letting go or discovery or rediscovery. It's just little vignettes of love and loss all throughout the song, all kind of tying up to this whole theme of Tangled Up in Blue, which I think is a phenomenal way of kind of tying loose ends together under one umbrella. It's convincing. It's a really well done song. But yeah, that harmonica at the end just takes you right back to the old days. I mean, it really does. His harmonica style is very unique. Simple Twist of Fate. This one, I really like the lightly strummed acoustic over he's got a handful of sort of playful chords, and the song is kind of sad, really, but the way he sings it doesn't really sound like he's that sad. Like, there's a melancholy to this story, but he doesn't sound too down about it, which is, it's a very Pet Sounds-ian way of presenting a song where the music might be super stoked and he might sing it really happy, but the subject matter is really sad, or, maybe it's sung really sad, but it's a happy song, or, vice versa. It's that kind of thing. But, this song for me could easily fit on one of his albums in between 63 and 66. No problem. This sounds like something from back then. Again, a song about looking back, accepting the past and the present, how to work through loneliness. This one, for me, is where other elements of the band start picking up. So the bass on this one I found really enjoyable. I think it bounces along pretty well, adds a good dynamic to the song. But, yeah, well done track on that one. You're a Big Girl Now. This one for me has more of a contemporary 70s feel. So this is the first track in the album where I'm like, okay, this sounds like it's trying to be of its time a little bit. Not all the way. It's definitely got that 70s soft rock vibe kind of mentality to it. I really like the cool acoustic riffing that kind of travels over this thing. The piano underneath it all I think is a nice touch. And the hi-hat and snare shuffle of the drummer there I think is fantastic too. Very unique sound for this album. But Bob soars vocally on this track. And it's a song about a relationship coming to an end. The harmonica on this one has like a mournful kind of tonality to it. And I feel like its presence there kind of drives home that loneliness. The harmonica, for some reason, always represents either like bright, joyous happiness or like you're traveling on a train by yourself, lost in the middle of nowhere. And how the song just kind of fades into like nothingness. There's no resolve. It just kind of like, and sometimes you kind of feel that way after a relationship ends. You're kind of like hanging there in limbo, like, what do I do now? Like, how do I get through this next part? That's kind of what this song feels like. Idiot Wind. This is a really long song. But Dylan just packs a ton of punches in this one. I mean, he really like goes for the throat with a lot of these lines. Like, there's a line like, I can't even touch the books you've read, which I think is a great line. Making me see in stars. Like, it's great. There's really powerful drums. The organ work on this one's fantastic. But Dylan's just giving it 100%. Everybody in the band really is too. But it's cool to see Dylan kind of play the role of like rock star in a way. Because I really feel like he gives it his all on this one. Just generally singing louder. And his lyrics are just so biting. And how he gets more and more into it as the song builds and progresses. He gets so deep into the whole mentality of like, how have you gotten this far in life? It's an interesting concept. You're Gonna Make Me Lonesome When You Go. This is another one where that harmonica is just pure magic. It's just Dylan at his best harmonica playing. I love that style. Absolutely fantastic. And Dylan sings like he's smiling on this one again. It's not a necessarily happy song, but he does sing like he's got a little smile on his face. It's a sad lyric, but kind of done in a sort of, I'm kind of tossing this off my shoulder kind of way. Like, I'll be alright, I guess. Yeah, it sucks for right now, but won't be that bad. Side 2 starts off with Meet Me in the Morning. This is a bit of a country twang, and Dylan's voice kind of borders on fun with a tinge of sadness. This one vocally kind of goes back and forth. There's hints of fuzzy guitar underneath it all, under the neat little acoustic shuffle that it has. And there's an edge not yet heard on the album. So, very cool song in that respect. It kind of gives a little bit more of a rock and roll vibe. Really love that one. Lily, Rosemary, and the Jack of Hearts. This is classic Bob Dylan storytelling 101. Taking elements of life and using names as metaphors and, creating stories to tell, or creating characters and emotions to tell a story about maybe something he's going through. He doesn't want to use his own first person with, that he kind of shares through, images and characters. But the organ work is super open and broad. The bass rumbles through, which is really cool, and Dylan flows out the lyrics seamlessly. It's almost, I want to call it a rap, but just the way he puts these words out, so spitfire, it's great. It's a story of deception, business, heartache. For me, it sounds like a merry-go-round or a steamboat song. Like, it just has this riverboat quality, which I guess because they talk about being on a riverboat in the song, but, it definitely captures that imagery of, you know, old school up the Mississippi River kind of thing. If you see her, say hello. This one is kind of a nice break to have after that last one because this is more reflective, more calm. And people might think it's about Joan Baez. Who knows what it's about? But I love the musicianship on this one. There's a slight build-up as the song continues. Really cool. I enjoy that one a lot. Don't really have much more to say on that one. Shelter from the Storm has always been one of my favorites. I love this song. It's kind of like Tangled Up in Blue, where he ends each refrain with the name of the song. Each verse, you know, has to add that safety to it. So the verses themselves kind of create this catastrophe or sadness or loneliness or heartbreak or hardship, and it always ends with, come in, you know, I'll give you shelter from the storm. It's like no matter how bad it gets, someone's going to save that person, you know, relieving them from this torture. And I really like that. I think that's a cool imagery to have, and I think it's a cool mentality to sort of showcase that, like, no matter how bad something gets, it's going to get better at some point. So I really, really enjoy that song a lot. And Buckets of Rain, you know, it's interesting how this album ends with lots of leaving themes. Kind of, you know, how you're left with the album being over at one point and you're kind of wondering, like, what happened to the guy in all these songs? The guitar work here is a little flashy, but I like that it adds some character to the album. And the bass on this song in particular, I feel like just kind of plays its own song, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, it definitely, it feels like an ending song. It almost has like a resolve to it, or not really resolve, but more of a assurance that going forward might not be as bad as it is right now. No matter how bad it might feel, it might get better. That's kind of what I got from this song. But here's the back cover. And my copy is not in the best condition by far, but I've wanted this on vinyl for a long time, and I happened to find this for really, really cheap. So this is a placeholder copy for now, until I can save up more and find a better one down the line. But it's really not in that bad condition. It's a little scratchy, a little poppy, but that never hurt anybody. It gives it character. There you go. So yeah, Bob Dylan, Blood on the Tracks. It's one of my favorite albums by him, and I really like that. I find it impressive that, you know, at this point in his career, this was about 10 or 11 years into his career, more than that, 13 years or so, that he was putting out albums, and still finding fresh ways to approach a subject or himself and maybe kind of cover it up with a bit of a disguise. Or possibly be writing from someone else's short stories. We will never know the real story here, but regardless of that, the storytelling here, the musicianship, the overall experience of this album is unbelievable. It's fantastic. It's one of his best. For me, this is a 9 out of 10 all day, hands down. I love this album. And that's it, 9 out of 10. So my name is Giggens. This has been Bob Dylan, Blood on the Tracks. And let me know what you think about it. I'd be interested to talk about some Bob Dylan with you guys. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.